Welcome to the HR Fix, the HR podcast for HR professionals who want to grow and be the best. I'm Judith Fiddler and I'll be your host, so come and join us on our journey as we change an entire industry. Come on, let's get started. There is something that I am calling long-term sick limbo. And what does that mean? That means that there is an employee of an organisation and they are going on long-term sick leave and they've been on sick leave for a little while. And maybe that looks like a month, maybe that looks like 6 months, maybe that looks like, I don't know, could be anything, depending on the policies, depending on the patiences of those who are involved, depending on the size of the company, depending on the seniority of the role. It could be a different amount of time. But there becomes a time where somebody is off on sick leave that a company and an employee, I'm going to come on to both of these, but the company starts to say, enough is enough. We can't deal with this anymore. We've reached the end of the line. Something needs to happen. And for the employer, that means one thing. But the employee on the other side is going, the longer I'm off, the less likely I am to go back. The more entrenched my position about the original problem that I didn't, that I came off from. Usually if it's obviously to do with sickness. But if it's work-related stress, which the majority of cases that we get are, the majority of cases of people being off on long-term sick leave are, then that is because there has been a trigger, there's been an issue. And especially if it's been left for a long time, if it's been left for a month or 2 months or 3 months or more, then that sort of shows that the company doesn't want to deal with it. If they've not been in touch with them, and many companies actually make the mistake, and many HR people make the mistake of not being in touch with the employee because they say, well, they're on sick leave, so of course I can't touch them. So therefore they sort of file it away and they're waiting to get the sick notes in every month or every 2 months, however often the fit notes are coming in. But they sort of use that as their excuse not to deal with it. And then suddenly you get to this position where you're in limbo land and it sort of becomes what I'm sort of referring to as a Mexican standoff. The employee wants to leave, but they want to leave on the best possible financial terms that they can. So they're potentially looking to bring a claim. And the employer wants to get rid of them as safely, as smoothly, as cheaply as they possibly can. So we're sort of ending up in this limbo land. And that's the introduction that I wanted to share with you with a case that we have just taken on and that we are dealing with now. Now, the facts of this case are that this is an employee who's been employed in a commercial environment, corporate environment for 12 years. She is in the SMT, she's in the senior management team, and she works in compliance. And this is exactly what happened to her. She put in a grievance in around the July, and then she was working over the summer, and then she was asking for some things to be fixed. The grievance got completely ignored. And then in the October, she went off on sick leave and citing work-related stress and has been putting in sick notes for the last 2 months, 2.5 months, 3 months. And at that point, the employer turned around and said, so remember, nothing has really happened apart from sick notes. But I'm saying in the back of people's heads, there's this, how are we going to remove ourselves from this situation? The employer's thinking it and so is the employee. So at that point, she then received from her employer a couple of letters. Now remember, let's come out of our scenario for a minute. Now remember, we're in limbo land. The employer wants to remove, the employee wants to remove. Instead of all sitting down and having a nice, neat conversation about it, we're both resorting to what positions do we have to follow because of the position that we're in? What do we have to stick to? What are the rules? And the employer's got a few options. They could support the sickness, in which case they would have done so beforehand. How are you doing? We want to support you back to work. That would be a consistent, regular thing. Occupational health, all of those sorts of things. They can look at finding issues, so they can look at conduct, which is sort of not the nice way out. They sort of notice that this person's been absent for a few months and they will pick on things to do with their work, that you didn't do this properly, you didn't do that properly, we've got an issue, we've got a disciplinary when you return back to work. That's sort of the nasty way. There's the nice way, there's the supportive way, which is about the health and can we support you back to work, are you looking to come back? There's the nasty way, which is the conduct. And then there's also the sort of the settlement way out as well. There's also the opportunity just to wait, just to sit it out and see what happens. Most people are not happy to do that because of, especially in this case, because of the seniority of the position. So at some point you get a bit annoyed about having to replace people on a temporary basis. Those people want to know that they're permanent, or you want to recruit it on a permanent basis. Maybe if you've got agency staff in, that could be costing you more money. So there is a legal need, there is a genuine business need to want to move these things forward. Okay, so back to our case. So in our case, they had asked for an occupational health. So after sickness for about 4 or 5 weeks, they did occupational health. Now I'm working for the employee. So the employee came to me and said, look, the way that the letter was positioned from the employer to the employee did appear that they were using occupational health as a lever
to get her back into work. It was done in a very aggressive, I would say semi-abusive way. It was sort of saying, and this isn't the exact wording, but this is the message that was being portrayed, and that's why I talk about messaging being so important inside letters. The message being portrayed was, look, we're sick of this now. You've been off for too long, and we think that you're milking it, and therefore we don't believe you, and therefore we're sending you to an occupational health. And we need you to do that. And the answers and the questions that we're going to be expecting or requesting of the occupational health is, how much longer do we have to put up with this? Why are you still off? And are you even under the doctor because we don't believe that you are? And the reason for absence was work-related stress. So actually, I worked with this employee to say, look, if you trust me, this is the answers, this is the timeline, this is the responses that we need to be giving to the occupational health. And that's exactly what we did. And we actually came back with a report that said that she had been bullied and harassed and was under significant stress for the last 2 years of her employment, and that counted as a disability under the Equality Act. So what we do think started out as the employer going, I'm trying to move forward with the capability because they thought that was the nicer thing to do, actually backfired on them, and it meant that we had on the record the fact, and they should have predicted that and they should have understood that. Had they had HR, and they have 5 or 6 people in their HR team, and they've got outsourced, and they go to solicitors. So there's absolutely no excuse for that. They weren't getting the right advice and the right people in the right way. But irrespective, there was no way they should have let it get to that point, but they did. And we managed to protect the employee's position by having this on the record. So this occupational health really did support us and assist us moving forward. And then from there, they didn't know what to do. Again, they're in limbo land. They want her back at work. The occupational health report said that she wasn't fit to come back to work, but that she needed to have discussions with her seniors because that was the point of broken trust and confidence. And that had to be fixed, that had to be addressed before that she could come back into the workplace. So what did they do? Well, they did what most companies would do. They ignored the occupational health report and those reasonable adjustments for at least another 6 weeks. And then at that point, you can see them reviewing it and saying, well, how do we move forward with this? There was a telephone call actually from one of the director's PAs who phoned up and said, actually, because of the outcome of the occupational health report, it's made the decision here that nobody in a senior position is willing to talk to you because you said that you were so stressed with work and the other things that had gone on and trust and confidence that had gone. We've made the decision here that nobody has talked to you, which was the exact opposite of what the occupational health, the outcome was. The reasonable adjustments were that they should talk to her, said exactly the opposite. And that there's a couple of letters coming out to you, one of which is going to be without prejudice. 2 letters then arrived. The first one was said, without prejudice, we do not agree with the occupational health report. You are not entitled to your own opinion. This is literally what it said. Not entitled to the opinion that we're not supporting you. That is not true. How can you? I'm not sure how you can question someone's opinion in a health report, but anyway, that's what they did. And therefore, we want to discuss this with you further because your opinion is not correct. It said without prejudice, but there was no offer in it. And the second one was an open letter, and they'd gone down what I'm calling the misconduct route as well. They decided that it was really clever for them to go down 2 avenues or 2 routes at the same time. And the misconduct route was, and we've been looking through your work, and there's 1 or 2 mistakes, and we find them to be really serious. And then in the same letter, it said, and actually, we know that you've been contacting members of staff, and you've been talking about the managers in a negative way. And this was about private WhatsApp, that she sent 1 WhatsApp to 1 person. We think we know exactly what the issue is. But this is how they are triaging. This is how they are looking to compartmentalize the issue. So we've already got, there's an occupational health that hasn't been addressed. Now we've got a without prejudice that isn't really without prejudice because there's been no offer. They've asked for a meeting to discuss the occupational health to tell her that she's wrong. And then we've got these veiled threats for at least 2 sorts of disciplinary processes to do with issues that they found and 1 negative message. So at which point, and because of the tone of the language and this phone call that said, no one's prepared to listen to you, we then said immediately that those issues together, 3 or 4 issues, were enough for a fundamental breach, and we want to move this forward to a constructive dismissal case. That is probably the worst thing. Those 3 things that one person did, the PA, at the response of or at the instruction of that director, is probably the worst thing that she's ever done. That now we have just moved forward to a case that I'm saying is worth between £80,000 to £100,000 worth of claim in those 3 things. So my message here is, when we're talking about different ways to come out of or to relieve from limbo land, from a long-term sickness limbo land, the decisions that we make as HR, the advice that we give is so important. The choices between the nice thing, the not nice thing, or the waiting it out thing, and the attitude and the mindset that we have when we're addressing these things is so paramount, is so important. It can literally be the difference between somebody resigning and understanding and leaving, or an £80,000 to £100,000 case. Can you imagine £100,000 for 2 letters from HR is absolutely astounding. But I will keep you updated on this story as it develops, and it's something that we're talking about inside of our membership and inside of our movement. So this is things that you need to be on the lookout. How are you responding to things? Even when you think they're safe, they have a way of coming back to haunt you. I'm wishing you a good day. Happy HRing.